Well, we said after Wisconsin lost 27-10 to Maryland that was rock bottom for the program. It turns out we were wrong. I was on the phone a lot this morning. It sounds like Wisconsin had their regular scheduled practice. Were you surprised, Colin, that there was no announcement this morning regarding the future of the program?
After a performance like yesterday, as a player, and even from myself, you kind of expect from those results to wake up for, player gets a text that they have an emergency team meeting, and you get to see Luke Fickell for 2 minutes more for the rest of your life. That's kind of the situation and where Badger football is at right now, and it's kind of what we expected if worse came to worse, as we started talking about at the beginning of this season. It is kind of what we expected if things did not get better, if things did not improve. And it seems like it's only getting worse because we didn't score a single point and we gave up dang near 40 points. It seems to be getting worse. And to me, if you don't have leadership and culture problems, this game is at least competitive. Scheme, coaching, preparation, not having guys prepared for the game. Especially in Iowa, not having guys prepared for the game is absolutely inexcusable. That is one of your main jobs as a head coach at the University of Wisconsin, is to have your players prepared for Iowa and Minnesota. Obviously every game, but Iowa and Minnesota is non-negotiable. And to be able to have a worse performance year after year against Iowa and not being able to stop the run for 3 consistent years, it's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing for former players, for fans, and I can't imagine what it's like for players who actually care about this program that are in that locker room right now. It's inexcusable. So I'm actually pretty shocked that I didn't wake up from a Twitter notification that he is no longer there. And it's unfortunate, but it goes back to if leadership and culture is not a problem, this game is at least a bit more of a dogfight than what it was shown last night.
Right, and to speak more to that, I don't know how you let what happened a year ago against Iowa happen. You stew in that for an entire year. Revenge is, pretty much all that was talked about in the offseason. The team was doing 42 push-ups after every offseason workout to remind themselves of what happened against Iowa. And then you get your chance, and then you get beat down worse than you did a year ago on your home field. You just basically read my mind. This game had to have been lost before it even started. There's no other way. I mean, as men, I'm just sitting here as a 36-year-old guy that played high school football. I'm not the person that should be speaking about this, but I would have to imagine they had their manhood questioned a lot by Iowa, who, like you talked about, was basically a mirror image of Wisconsin up until Paul Chryst was fired. So you've had this identity, and then you look at the Iowa team across the way, who never gave in to any of the outside noise. There were a lot of people that wanted Kirk Ferentz fired for quite a bit. They stayed true to who they are, and I gotta just feel like it's a huge gut punch to everyone. I'm not saying Wisconsin didn't need to, adapt in some ways and catch up if they were gonna take that next step as a program, but to watch Iowa sort of be able to navigate this new era better than Wisconsin did when it was Wisconsin who made the big sweeping changes and went all in on Luke Fickell. I just got to believe that's the toughest gut punch right now, especially for alumni like yourself who have put so much into this program.
You're exactly right. I didn't even think about it that way. Iowa is Wisconsin if Wisconsin didn't make these changes.
Yeah.
And they whooped our ass 3 straight years now. Not to say I've lost to Iowa before. but at least
Right.
it came down to the wire. It came down to the fourth quarter. Came down to the last few drives. That's the way it is. But yeah, that is tough. That's a tough perspective to have when you have Iowa completely staying true to their ways, staying true to their culture, staying true to what they built. Um, and they're trusting it. Even with all the changes, portal, NIL, they're trusting the way that they have gone about their business and built their program. And they're staying true to it. And it shows exactly where their program is at and our program is at when we used to compare that we were the same. And we are not the same right now. And it's embarrassing.
And I'm tired of everyone talking about too. I see this more on a national level, like Colin Cowherd on his show, and then some other woman who I think is on the Dan Levitard show talking about, oh, this is NIL problem. Wisconsin's not adapting to NIL. Just enough of that. Iowa does not have Wisconsin's money. I mean, Minnesota can put out a respectable product on the field. You can't show me teams like Louisville, Cincinnati, who ironically is the team Fickell left, Vanderbilt, Virginia, all these teams that don't have Wisconsin's money, don't have Wisconsin's tradition and history, have figured this thing out a lot better than the Badgers have. I mean, this goes way beyond whatever Wisconsin is spending in the transfer portal and high school recruiting. And they've spent around $1 million, in some cases more than $1 million, on three quarterbacks who've hardly played for this program too. So they've got money. They're certainly not poor. We as a media continue to try and probe and figure out what is this cancer that's setting the program back, what's going on in the locker room from a culture standpoint, because it just doesn't make any sense that a program like Wisconsin puts that out on the field under the lights in Camp Randall Stadium in a rivalry game in homecoming of all the times to kind of rise up here. And there have been a couple times in the Luke Fickell tenure, but you're also coming off a game in Michigan where you didn't do any of this stuff that absolutely killed you. That's the other maddening part. A week ago we talked about how clean Wisconsin played, and we're like, hey, for the first time in a while, at least we can stop talking about self-inflicted wounds, stepping on your foot, and getting on your own way. We can talk about football, but it's one tiny step forward and then 8 steps backward last night.
Yeah, I was expecting to get on the show before the game and talk about scheme, grit, who came out on top in the fourth quarter, who ended up folding, whether it was us or Iowa. I was expecting to talk more about football than culture, but it seems like there's no scheme to talk about because scheme doesn't matter at this point when you put a product like that on the field. That is not the issue, and I hope people, fans, see this, that this is not necessarily a scheme issue as the root of the problem. It's not, players got to play better, players got to make plays, they got to execute, yes. We got to execute the play calls. Play calls could be better. But even if you have bad scheme, bad play calls, if Wisconsin, Iowa, it comes down to culture versus culture. That's how it should come down to every year. The scheme is simple. The game plans are simple. And that is the main root of the problem, and that's the perfect game to show exactly what's going on in that program. And it has nothing to do with scheme. And we've been saying this for weeks now, that it is people, relationships, and how you're treating your players and how these players want to buy in. Whether it's good messages or bad messages, players are not bought in. And that's on the leaders at the end of the day. That is on Luke Fickell. And the players are not bought in, and it's clear. It's clear. And I don't know what he's saying, what he's doing, but I know that there's some really good kids on that team that work extremely hard and buy in. And if you don't have them bought in, then that's a damn shame. That is a damn shame. And I feel really bad for those guys. And I feel really bad for those who are really emotionally bought into this program because somebody is crumbling it right now. Leadership is crumbling it.
Along those lines, I didn't plan on talking about this, but it kind of brings up, I was on the phones this morning just trying to ask around, trying to get to the root of the problem for Wisconsin football. And I still feel like he hasn't necessarily lost this team. I spoke to some people who said, they were calling their son, FaceTiming their son, and Fridays, Saturday morning, they had a big smile on their face. They expected to win the game. They thought Michigan was maybe the turning point for the team, and they were going to get this thing back on track. Obviously, it didn't translate to the field Saturday. But the one glaring issue, it does sound like, is Luke Fickell's relationship with his players. The word intimidating has been thrown around a lot. Things like the players just can't talk to him away from football is something that's pretty consistent. And as a result, I think you get guys playing scared, walking on eggshells. I don't know if that's a big enough deal to derail a once proud program like this, but from what you know and some of the former teammates you have on the team, do you feel like that's maybe the root of all this? When it comes down to just how they're playing between the lines.
I think it is, and I don't talk to them in enough detail because personally I don't want to know from that detailed of a standpoint to where I talk about this and guys are getting pointed out that they're talking to the media poorly about their coaching staff. Like I don't get too down the weeds, but I do have sources that are very close to the locker room and to the staff. And I've heard from multiple people that some parents may have said, I don't even know if Luke Fickell knows the name of my son that's on the team. We've heard that. I've heard that multiple times. And that's an issue. A player who was bought into a vision of a coach trying to lead a team and you don't even know the name of the kid playing on the team. And that happens. That 100% happens. I've been on a team where I've had a coach, and it wasn't Wisconsin, but I've had a coach look at a walk-on in the eye, walk in the locker room and says, I have no idea who you are. It happens. It is an actual thing in college football. And so that's not the Wisconsin way. We talk about Wisconsin way of the product that we see on the field, where there's a way of how you carry yourself in the building. And that's the root of it, and that's where it starts to where you have competitive play on the field. Because I guarantee you, when you have adversity like this and you're losing ball games, you got to look back to your leaders. And if there's a coach that doesn't even know my name, and he's over there giving a speech about how we need to push through and we need to do this and that, I'm not listening to a word he says. I'm not bought in. I don't care what his message is because he didn't care about me. And we're not doing well. Winning cures everything. You can have some jerks like that leading teams, but when you're winning, people buy in. Who cares? I'll deal with it. But when you're not winning and you have jerks like that, or you have people who don't build relationships, nobody's buying in. Everybody's done. They're done with that. So I think that is a major problem. That is part of a root in that locker room that's toxic.
So the big question now is there any way back out of this? And my whole mantra with coach firings, the things I believe in is I don't think you make a change unless you're absolutely sure there's no way back up. I've seen enough. You don't want to be one of those schools that's constantly recycling coaches and can never find the right one. I think you always want to give somebody the benefit of the doubt and a chance to bounce back up when things are at their lowest point, because I think that's when you find out the most about people. And Luke Fickell comes into the press conference last night clearly crying. His eyes were red, and it felt like a couple times he was close to breaking down. One question in particular, is the program in a better spot than when you got here? I think that one got to him a little bit. He felt a little choked up to me. So as harsh as we're going to be right now, I think it's important to remember that this is just football. These are still people, but at the same time, one thing I noticed last night really struck me about how much damage has been done here, and it was with the fans. I mean, I knew they were getting tired of this. I knew interest was dwindling, but you heard some Fire Fickell chants in the first quarter, relatively quiet to what they were against Maryland, all came from the student section. And when they went into the locker room, down big again, I went outside to take a video because I thought the boos were just going to be deafening. I thought people were going to be very harsh, very loud. There was going to be outrage. And there really wasn't much. It was a couple boos from the student section. And that just kind of told me fans are numb to this too. Even they've given up. I mean, they should be irate. The people that paid, I know ticket sales and the price, you can get some pretty good prices right now, or pretty good seats for about $40-$50. So maybe they weren't too mad about that. Maybe it was Barry Alvarez calling them all spoiled for what they did against Maryland. That subdued them a bit. I don't know, but I expected a ton of outrage and the loudest boos we've ever heard. And it just wasn't much. And I've heard this from a lot of people that, used to make Badger football part of their routine every Saturday. They won't subject themselves to it anymore. And that tells me there might be irreparable damage, at least in the short term, because this is a fan base that was one of the best in college football. It's a big part of what made Madison the number one college town in America, one of the best game day atmospheres in the country. And even they've stopped caring to a degree.
That's sad. It's so sad and unfortunate. You had the first hand experience of it last night, and being numb from a player's standpoint, you're a lot more sensitive, a lot more mistakes that happen. You're quicker to get numb to it because it's right in front of your face all the time. You were there. You're the product of it. Being a fan and getting numb to losing takes a lot more because you're always holding on to that hope, that unknown hope that you have. You're not inside the building, but you're counting on that, your team to be successful week in, week out. And when you have fans being numb, it's just deafening, and it's dark. And I feel really bad for the fans. I really do. And I could see that there weren't nearly as many out there near the second half or probably the fourth quarter. And I did talk to, actually I ran into a season ticket holder last week in one of the suites. And a lot of those contracts I heard are up, or those tickets are up and need to be renewed next season. And I have not heard too many positive things going forward that they're going to want to renew their tickets. So it's sad. It's sad. We need a better product on the field, and again, it starts from the beginning, the foundation, the roots, and it's a good learning lesson for leaders, right? In general, just leadership coming into something new. That foundation is extremely important, whether you're successful initially or not. But that base foundation is extremely, extremely important, and to build something special and to build good relationships and solid ground on where you want to start with your people. And it's a great learning lesson because I kind of saw this from the beginning, and where it is now, it's honestly not that shocking.
And this could get even uglier in a week here as number one Ohio State's coming to town, and they're not going to feel sorry for Wisconsin. And the one thing I've really respected about Ohio State ever since Wisconsin beat them in 2011 is they just don't overlook the Badgers. I mean, Wisconsin's pretty much gotten their best shot, with the exception of that game and maybe in 2023 a couple years ago that, it was a 4-quarter game under the lights at Camp Randall. But they have not slept on Wisconsin since they got beat in that 2011 game where Wisconsin beat the number one and undefeated team there. I don't picture that happening again Saturday, but yeah, I got to admit, there were a ton of Iowa fans there on Saturday too, and I just got to imagine Badger fans are probably ditching their tickets right now, and it's going to get overrun by Buckeye fans Saturday afternoon because they can come for cheap. Their team's really good. You're almost guaranteed to win. And, Wisconsin fans just are going to be selling those left and right. But I was thinking about this last night. Before Saturday, I would have said Northwestern was the worst team in the Big Ten. A couple weeks ago, I would have said UCLA. I don't think there's any doubt that Wisconsin's the worst team in this 18-team field. And, I'm starting to look around and wondering, are they the worst team in Power 4 right now? I think it's a legit question. They might be the worst team in all Power 4.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way. But what product do you see on the field week in, week out that turns into this? Now also
They had run defense, and now I don't know that they have it anymore.
Yeah. That was the one positive that they had going into week by week was their run defense was strong. It was firm. Now, don't get me wrong. We played some really good teams week in, week out.
Yeah.
But this was the least competitive game out of all of those games. Even Alabama, this was the least competitive game, and it seems like they're not getting better. They're not improving. So I think they're heading towards that route. But no doubt in the Big Ten right now, they show the least amount of fight. They show the least amount. I mean, you got Purdue, Minnesota, even Northwestern.
Yeah. Do you think Wisconsin could score 27 points against Illinois like Purdue did?
Absolutely
or
not.
30 against Notre Dame?
Absolutely not.
I mean, they only lost 33-17 to USC. I don't even think Wisconsin could lose 27-20 to Minnesota right now the way Purdue did last night. And then Boston College is, pretty bad, but, Boston College held it in there with somebody early in the season. Michigan State lost in double overtime. I mean, they've got a couple close losses. It's either Wisconsin or Boston College, I think.
Right. And from a Big Ten standpoint, I mean, Purdue and Rutgers, and then you have Penn State above them at the bottom of the totem pole, and then we're at the very bottom. But we're all 0-3. Michigan State's 0-3. But those games, if you watch them play, it's all competitive. It comes down to the wire. And don't get me wrong, Penn State is down tremendously as well. But
if I told you before the season that Wisconsin would be tied with Penn State in the standings at this point, you'd be thrilled.
Oh yes, it means we're in great shape.
Right.
Great shape. Yeah. So we are heading towards that route though of one of the worst teams in P4 football right now, and it's only going to get more difficult as the schedule goes on. Washington's playing good football. Minnesota, they know how to play us every year regardless, but they're not playing horrible football. They're playing better football than us right now. And then let's go with the gauntlet of Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Illinois. So it's not getting any better, but also this is what you signed up for if you are Luke Fickell. This is what you signed up for coaching and pouring into these players, and it is your job to prepare these players every single week. Even now, you're getting paid the big bucks to still be prepared and to go beat Ohio State. You have to find a way to do that. I don't have the answers, but you put yourself in this position to have to really dig deep and find a way to communicate with your players now even more than ever. But that's what they pay you for. That's what they pay you the big bucks for.
So looking at the game in general, it gets off to a terrible start, and this is another reason why I think you have to question what's going on in the locker room. How is this program being run? Because before this thing even starts, there's Tyrese Fearbry sitting around midfield waiting for Iowa to come out of the locker room. John making contact, disrespecting Iowa. And this is a guy who didn't play in the game last year. He was at Kentucky. Whatever feelings I don't know what feelings he could possibly have towards Iowa. Now, for Daryl Peterson or somebody like that, maybe, okay, it makes sense to kind of set a tone. You've got a bad taste in your mouth. Obviously, you don't get the 15-yard penalty. But I'm thinking right off the bat, I mean, how is Luke Fickell running a program to the point where a guy like this, a reserve outside linebacker, not a starter, a backup, feels the need to separate himself from the team, make a show of himself, draw attention to himself in that way, and then get a 15-yard penalty? It didn't really hurt Wisconsin because they got the 3 and out, but at the time, you got to remember, Iowa's got one of the most dangerous return men in the country. Wisconsin typically going to kick that thing through the back of the end zone. Now you got to kick it to the guy and give him a chance to make a play. How are you running a program to a point where somebody like this thinks that is okay? To me, that speaks to a larger issue of, again, culture, how this program's being run, and the fact that, I feel like Wisconsin lost this game before kickoff ever started. That incident was just a foreshadow.
Yeah, yeah. You took a lot of words out of my mouth, but this day and age, in the player standpoint, even coaches that allow it or even do it, it's very like in front of the camera, like what can I do to get the clicks and the videos and I'm not saying that was the player's intentions, but when you're just singled out, waiting out the tunnel to go talk to the opponent, the cameras are on you. The fans are watching you. I always thought fans were watching every single move that I was doing on the field. Eventually, you grow to not care about it, but even from a standpoint of how you carry yourself onto the field and warm-ups and out on the field, players or fans and cameras are on you everywhere. So there was a different way of how you handled yourself to make sure that you were a good example, that you were a good teammate, you weren't a distraction. And he just did the complete opposite of all that. And I can't remember a time when that was ever allowed, or when that was ever okay. And
I was going to ask, what would Paul Christ and sorry to cut you off. I thought you were done, but what would Paul Christ or Jim Leonard do if you pulled that move?
Coach Christ is not a yeller, but his voice would have been raised at that point, and I might have not have played for the first quarter. I mean, I would have probably gotten back in the game, but I probably would have had some repercussions from it immediately.
Because he played again right away.
Well, and this is a game where historically it's going to come down to defense and special teams, and you have one of the best returners in the country that you just allowed to go catch the football on the first snap of the game. So that in itself, it could have been detrimental. It wasn't, but it could have, and it hurts the team. And it's more about guys who think about that this game, it's a rivalry game. Some players may think that it's more about them. It's not about you. This game has never been about you, and that's what the message should have been all week. It's about the history of this program, the history of this rivalry, and how can you honor that today by what is consistently played on the field year after year in these teams playing each other.
So the offensive side of the ball, if you would have told me Dylan Jones in that run game was going to look as good as they did Saturday, I would have thought Wisconsin might have won that game. I mean, it made some gaping holes for Jones. I know 16 carries, 69 yards isn't going to jump off the page, but, if you watch that game, obviously they were doing things in the run game that they haven't done all season, and this was an Iowa defense that came in ranked fourth against the run. They were shutting everybody down. Wisconsin got 127 yards on the ground, averaged nearly 5 yards per carry, and they lost Darian Dupree in that one as well. So, and that's unfortunate because Hunter Simmons, and this was my big fear for him. I think I said it a week ago. Now that somebody's got some tape on you, how are you going to look? And Wisconsin continues to not be able to go anywhere offensively with the quarterback play that they have. Simmons, 8 of 21, 82 yards, 3 turnovers, including 2 interceptions. At one point, he was 2 of 7 passing, and Iowa had 17 points off his turnovers, which essentially boils down to the Hawkeyes were getting 2.4 points every time he threw the football. I don't want to go too hard on the kid. He's in a tough spot. He shouldn't even be out there, and he feels the weight of the world of this program on his shoulders now, having to play quarterback for this program. But let's talk bigger picture quarterback. I've never understood this about Wisconsin, and this predates Luke Fickell. But we're talking about the most important position in sports here. And I feel like the way they've recruited it has been way too nonchalant. Especially you saw what the future could be when you get a Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
It's through the roof. I mean, this was a while ago, but, back in the day when Wisconsin had pretty much every other piece to the puzzle, it was the quarterback that held them back. I don't understand the lack of urgency to get a guy. I mean, you're already spending money in the portal. Why not up it another $1 million get what you need, get a difference maker at that position. Let the other piece figure out the rest of the pieces later, because you can't do anything till you get this one solved. And this goes to high school recruiting too. I'd be adding 2 every year till I felt like I hit and I felt like I had a backup capable of keeping things moving if something were to happen. But it continues to be 1 every year, and it's not to live and die by the star ranking, but it's generally a middle of the road 3-star, and that's basically what Wisconsin has gotten.
Yeah, and it seems possible to go in and get the group of 5 quarterbacks, the all conference kids, the kids who have lit up their conference, to be able to pay the money. I mean, spend the money. I think it's worth spending the money on those guys. But you think that that's at least realistic, where you can go and get some of those guys where they'd want to go play for a big program like Wisconsin historically. And the programs and the way college football is these days, if you go across the board in the top 25, they all have really good quarterbacks. If you have a really good quarterback, you're gonna have a chance. You're gonna be okay. And I think from a GM standpoint, I know that all this is new, and I have no experience of a GM, but I think you made a great point of making sure that there is a quality backup. But also the challenge is what guy are you going to pay big money for that they're going to say, yes, I will gladly come back up so-and-so. I think it's getting a young player with maybe a lot of potential, and they're willing to back up a more experienced player, similar to Dante Moore, Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. That dynamic is very rare, where you have 2 really good quarterbacks,
Right.
one willing to take the time and not play the first year and learn from an older guy. That's not common these days. So I think the quality of getting a backup quarterback is the challenge too, because nobody wants to sit there and not play. And unless you throw a lot of money and they're there for the money, but then we got a whole nother issue going on, right? So I think the challenge of the quality of a quarterback is comes down to more the character and a guy willing to be there and learn, and somebody who's talented, and it's just rare.
And that's why I say it has started in recruiting too. Like, for instance, in this cycle, that they got their guy out of California, comes from a powerhouse program in modern day. They can like him all they want, but as well as I do in this game that there are no sure things. I mean, he may be good, he may not be. I mean, you got to add another one.
Yeah.
And you got to keep going and explain to him, look, we don't like you any less, but we can't afford something to happen to you. Or and the other thing too is quarterback is you kind of talked about it, but those guys are out the door almost quicker than anybody a lot of the times. I mean, even really good guys. I mean, you've seen Joe Burrow. I mean, how many pros have you seen not wanting to stick around and be a backup as of late and go do something big at another program? Luke Altmaier, Illinois. I mean, I think that type of situation would be very ideal, for Wisconsin. I know Altmaier's probably a different breed, and it's taken a lot less than he's worth, but I think the best route is to find somebody at a big-time program that's may have 2 or 3 years before they really get their shot. And that's Bo Peribla, however you say his last name, at Missouri. I know he didn't have a great game against Alabama, but that would have been the one. He's stuck behind Drew Aller. You were supposed to host him on a visit. I mean, I don't want to get into all the dynamics and timeline that everyone's arguing about, between him and Billy Edwards, but a situation like that would be really good. At least somebody that's played, maybe hasn't got starting experience, but has played a little bit, and especially against you know what they can do at that point, and get somebody like that. Ole Miss has got 2 quarterbacks right now. Eventually, one of them's going to have a go. I'd be pulling my money into that situation and trying to get somebody that's hungry and ready to be a program changer for me, rather than spending on somebody that isn't going to push you over the hump.
Yeah, you're right. And from my experience from coaching Coastal Carolina, our most productive players that we got out of the portal were. Now this is different. Now this isn't Wisconsin. We're not getting the same players, but we would have players coming from the SEC. We'd have players coming from from Ole Miss, Georgia, South Carolina, whoever it might be, and then we would go and recruit the D2 All-Americans. And the best players that we had were the D2 All-Americans. That's the most, and the JUCO guys. I mean, those were our most productive players typically. I mean, you had a few who could play and make an impact, but those guys were hungry. They saw it as bigger level football. They saw it as, hey, I didn't get breakfast. Now you're telling me I get. I mean, it was different at Coastal, or
Right.
we didn't have a chef making us omelets and everything. But you go to Wisconsin and you're like, man, this is big boy football. This is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be at. This is where I want to compete. I'm living the dream. So it's about the dynamic of recruiting players too, right? Like if you can get a kid who might have been a D2 All-American lighting up the field, quarterback, and he doesn't have any really big opportunities at Georgia or Auburn, whatever, SEC, Ohio State, whoever, and then Wisconsin comes and brings him in and says, hey, you have a chance to start. And you let a kid like that who's hungry and wants to compete and is grateful for every little thing that he gets at Wisconsin. If you can find a gem like that to where he may not have been ready, didn't start, Billy Edwards gets hurt, and then you got a kid like that who said, I've been waiting for this moment for my entire life to go light this up on a big stage like this. But, it's rare. It's not like you can go and find that, wherever. But those situations are real, though. And you can find that somewhere, possibly.
Did you watch Luke Fickell's press conference after the game?
I watched a few clips, read a few quotes, but didn't.
I was going to ask. A long clip. I was going to ask about. He was asked about Billy Edwards. I don't know if you saw this part.
I didn't see this
one. When he'll come back, and this kind of struck a lot of people as odd. But Fickell said with about 6 minutes left in the game, he went to go talk to Edwards to kind of feel him out and see how close he was going to be to returning. Obviously, I think it's fair to say there's desperation on his end to get Edwards back. But what did you just maybe make of him saying that? Like, hey, I'm going to break away from the game here, and I'm going to go check on a quarterback I can talk to anytime, and you'll see if I have any shot of getting him back against Ohio State.
Yeah, 6 minutes left in the game, and you have plenty of time to talk to this kid after. But I think that's kind of consistent of some things we've seen near the end of the games recently with Luke Fickell not using timeouts, a little bit of clock management questions, running the way that he milked the clock out against Alabama. And now 6 minutes left in the game, he's going to talk to a quarterback who's not playing right now to see when he's coming back and focused on the next week instead of trying to get your kids to finish the game. Have some pride in the program, have some pride in yourself. Those are the messages that you have when you're getting your ass whooped. Is you're trying to get these kids to still go out there and fight, and you're over there talking to the quarterback saying, "When are you coming back in the next future? I need you in the next few games." Don't worry about that right now. You'll talk to him after the game. There's plenty of time to talk to your starting quarterback who is going to be your guy. He'll always be able to talk to you. Now, to me, that's not the time to do it.
Based on what you've seen this season, is there any way out of this slide for Wisconsin, in your opinion? Is there anything they can hang their hat on anymore that lays any type of foundation for Luke Fickell to keep going in 2026?
The positive that they can look forward to, even if you're Luke Fickell, that you can look forward to is you have some still really big games, high-ranked games that, hey, if we beat Ohio State, we beat Oregon, we beat Indiana.
See, I was laughing too when you said it. Even you couldn't get through it with a straight face.
Listen to me now. No, listen
I was
to me
trying
now.
so hard not to laugh.
But that is what you have in front of you, right? So, like, if you can win those games, I mean, they're the hottest teams in college football. Like that is the one hope that you have is competing and winning with these winning these games. What other light is there right now? There is none. But you get to go out there and compete every single game against the best of the best. And I feel like I've been a broken record on this show because of the outcomes of every game. And the question always leads to: is there a light out of this? Is there a light out of this? You're still playing the best ball in the country. You get to play them every week. And my message is going to be the same. You get to play them every week. You're living the dream, and you get to go be the villain and ruin their seasons. I mean, the best thing that can come out of it is y'all just earning more and more respect. But it doesn't seem like this message is really coming across, but I'll just go ahead and say it again as a broken record that is the thing that you get to look forward to every week. And I know it's hard when you're losing, hard maybe having a head coach that you don't want to buy into at this point. But that is what you have to do in order to get yourself to play. You have to find a way to, internally and around the locker room, how are you going to play for each other and how are we going to go play our best ball, even when we're at this point in our season.
You've been on some teams where, you start to get counted out. Maybe not to this level, but I'm sure there have been opponents you played, after a few losses that maybe didn't take you guys as seriously as they should have, and you guys have always bounced back for the most part. Was there a game you remember where, after some losses, you just maybe felt disrespected in some way that helped turn things around, where opponents started not taking you seriously? I mean, is that Wisconsin's best hope, that Ohio State walks in here and just lollygags the whole week? I mean, did you ever experience that on the other side?
I've never experienced that where teams saw the film, they saw the tape of the product that we've had up to that point, and we never really had a problem of teams not respecting us. From a defensive standpoint,
I guess maybe the better question would be, did you do it to somebody else? Maybe Illinois 2019. I mean, did you? I mean, have you fallen into that trap on the other side? I guess I should have said.
I mean, we've never fallen into the trap per se when it came to not respecting a team, I guess, and losing from it. There's been times where we've played some non-Power 5 opponents, and we're watching the film. We're like, gosh, this is some bad football. But hey, we got to go out there. We got to execute. Like, we can't let these guys, hang in with us. That type of thing. But we had moments where we were really confident in our game plan, really confident in what we saw, ready to go out there and play. For example, 2021 Minnesota, we were extremely confident and ready to go out there and execute and go play really good football. I mean, we're on a 7-game or 8-game win streak at this point. Like, we're rolling. Let's go. We're going to keep doing what we do. But there was never a disrespect out of it. But there has been a moment where you're really confident, thinking that it's going to be one thing, and that the outcome isn't what you had in mind at all. But from a disrespectful standpoint, I have heard from some sources who are connected with Michigan that Michigan watched our tape, and the comments were just saying this is really bad football going up to that point. This is, and we've never had that before, right? Like, we've always wanted our opponents to watch the film and say, oh shit, like, these guys can go up and hit you. These guys are going to go up there and throw haymakers. Like, we better be ready. I've never wanted to have a team go and watch our film and say, wow, this is really bad football. This is bad. So hearing that commentary, now we kept it competitive for them, so thank goodness, it wasn't, it didn't get out of hand. But to hear that from an opponent on who's watched our film, it's unfortunate. You never want to be in that position.
Yeah, I said that last week. I mean, I felt like Michigan did not take them seriously at all. And they kind of went through the motions against Wisconsin, and I think you definitely saw that.
Yeah.
If this is it for Luke Fickell, and I'm just at the point where I always want to kind of leave that door open, because I know as soon as I go all in and go the other way, they're going to start winning games, turn it around, and end up on Old Text Exposed and all this other stuff. That's how it's going to go. But the why I am where I am, and like I said, I'm very conservative with this type of stuff. I don't like talking about it until I feel like there is no way out. And why I am at that point right now, the biggest problem I have is you went into this season, everyone dropped the bar so low for this program. Most rational fans said, just be competitive. Just lay some sort of foundation for 20. Give us something to feel good about for 2026. Everyone saw the schedule. Everyone knew making a bowl game was going to be an uphill battle. There were big changes on both sides of the ball. New offensive coordinator. They're trying to undo some of the previous damage of the first 2 years. We get it. All most people ask for was just be competitive. You hold your own in most of your games. They're not even doing that anymore, despite the constant moving of the goalpost for this guy. They can't do the bare minimum, and I don't know what to say anymore other than, unless you stun us all in these last couple weeks, I don't care what the buyout is. You've got to pull the plug on this thing because, the other edge of the coin here, too, is there's too much money at stake not to have a competitive football team and not be going to bowl games as well. I mean, good coaches will pay for themselves at some point.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think eventually you're going to end up losing more money keeping Luke Fickell, possibly. I don't know the math and all this, but you might lose more money keeping Luke Fickell than paying for his buyout and then going ahead and reinvesting and rebuilding this thing, right? And It's really unfortunate getting to the point where this program was not broken before when Luke Fickell came in, and now we're at a point where people see this program as broken, and it's really unfortunate to see that because you want to leave a place better than you found it in anything that you do, and Luke Fickell might be leaving this place making it worse than when he found it.
I want to circle back to what you just said about it being broken, and I like the analogy somebody on the message board used last night. You may not agree with it, but I found it interesting. He said Paul Chryst was driving the program towards a cliff. Now, he didn't say he pushed it over the cliff, but what he did say was Luke Fickell, instead of hitting the brakes, has hit the gas. I don't want to get into a topic that might rub you the wrong way. I mean, you should back Paul Chryst. I mean, if somebody asked me to say anything negative about my former coach, family, whatever, I wouldn't do it, and I think people would respect you less if you did. But I'll ask it this way. When you were there towards the latter years of his career, and you say that the program is not broken, what were just maybe the cracks that maybe it wasn't even in inside the locker room type of thing? Because everything I've heard, people love Paul Chryst. I mean, they would go to fight. They will fight anybody for him. And, I saw those press conferences after he got fired. Guys were in tears. Guys were devastated. It's not the same right now with what's going on with Luke Fickell in terms of the players' emotions. But, what things maybe just needed to change, and maybe it's outside your realm as a player, I think would be probably the fairest thing to say. But what things were you maybe noticing when stuff started to go in a downward trajectory that led to somebody probably making an irrational and very quick decision they shouldn't have made?
Yeah. We kind of talked about this from the moment Jack Cohn got injured. We had to make a big QB change there, and then Jack Cohn gets healthy. Graham Mertz is playing well. You then, as Paul Chryst, have to make that decision on who are you going to ride with, because odds are one of those guys are going to leave, with whoever you choose. And Jack Cohn could have stayed for another year in 2021, and he probably would have if he was the guy, because, he ended up staying or going to Notre Dame, but you had that point, too, where Paul Chryst had to make a decision. And Paul Chryst could have made this from a standpoint that, Graham Mertz was young. We had more time to invest in him and develop him. Like he's playing good enough football at this point where Jack Cohn is healthy. Let's ride with Graham Mertz, and and then we get to the point where we just never grew up as an offense. We never did, and Graham ended up having better seasons at Florida than he did at Wisconsin. And I don't know what the whole thing of that is. Some people could say development. Some people could say that it just wasn't his fit. I don't have an answer to that question, but I know that those things were starting to kind of get involved of some cracks, right? Of we had a really good defense, really, really good defense. And I know if we had an offense that could at least score probably 24 to 30 points a game, we would have a chance every single week. And so that was where we saw, something's got to change here. And we never said Coach Chryst needed to change as a player. I wanted him to coach until he retired there and had a great career. But we knew that something needed to change. And there was some offensive leadership of play calling and just who was kind of taking ownership of that. And I think that there were just some inconsistencies there, and it created some things that started those cracks, right? And that's where, from a defensive standpoint too, when you're playing really, really good football, you want something to change on that offense to where that level can be matched. Because we knew if that level was matched, I mean, the sky was the limit. We could win any game that we wanted to until we played, the big boys to see if that test would really work. But we never got to get to that point in 2021. We were a game short, but I think those type of things started to really creep in of like, especially from a fan standpoint, fire Coach Chris. We want a whole change. We need to change this whole offense. We can't score any points. And then we get Coach Leonard in there as the interim. And I understand when people say, well, he had his shot. Well, it is really hard. And this is why I don't support Luke Fickell getting fired midseason. Because if Luke Fickell's fired midseason, all these other coaches now know they don't have a job for the rest of once their season is done. They're not invested in the players nearly as much as if they had a stable job. They're all looking out for other jobs. They're trying to make sure they can go feed their families somewhere else next year. And the players have no idea what's going on. The routine is out of place. I mean, players are shocked, especially from a player or a coach like Coach Chris. Nobody wanted him to leave, so now there's emotions involved in it. It was a mess for Coach Leonard to go in and try and coach. We got to a point where Coach Leonard, near the end of the season, did a whole team meeting on his culture and what he would do for his program if he was the head coach. And Coach Leonard is a very smart guy. I guarantee you that he wouldn't have done that if he didn't think he was going to get the job. So don't get me wrong. I mean, they could have finished better. They could have played better when Coach Leonard hopped in there. But it was a mess that Coach Leonard was trying to pick up the pieces to and try to stay alive until he had his own program to run. So people saw that. I think he went 4-3 as the interim head coach. Coach Leonard's not good enough. We need a whole new change. All of our alums and everybody close to Wisconsin, they all got to go. We need to revamp this entire thing. And I guarantee you 70% of the fans were saying that. And so now, those spots though, I mean, they were cracks, but we weren't broken. There were some things that could have been fixed, and they could have been fixed with Paul Chris if there were just some other things that could have been that just could have been just on the same page with leadership, whatever it might be. Now, NIL and all that, it would have taken off. That's a whole nother story. But there were cracks, but we were not broken. We were capable of winning 9-10 games. We were competing to win 9-10 games. We were competing to try to get in Big Ten championships. Now the Big Ten's even more competitive. That would have been interesting to see if Coach Leonard was here during this schedule. Would have been really interesting to see. But I think regardless, there would have been a fight for that guy, because I guarantee you every single player in that locker room would have fallen in love with his culture and what he wanted to do. So there were cracks, but we weren't broken. We were capable to compete. Now, I don't think we're capable of even competing right now.
I think that's the biggest reason you probably don't fire a coach mid-season. I don't know if anybody wants to go through that shit show again. And also the reality of it is, I don't know if Wisconsin has an assistant coach on staff that can keep this thing going forward. I mean, Matt Mitchell, the outside linebackers coach, has been a head coach at Division II Grand Valley State. I think he's probably the best choice for that. But, you've got a small but somewhat powerful recruiting class at the top, too. You would most likely see. I mean, they've got some, again, I know nothing's a sure thing, but at least from my eyes, they've got some potential difference makers and, types of kids that they don't typically get at the top of this class. I don't know if you want to necessarily start that over from ground zero either. But one idea that's been thrown out, and I want to get your thoughts on this, if Luke Fickell does keep his job in 2026, if Wisconsin just determines that he's too expensive to fire, or they don't feel like they can get the quality of candidate that they need for this program right now, one idea that's been thrown out is doing what Stanford did and hiring a GM. Now, in this case, it probably wouldn't be a former player like they've got in Andrew Luck. It would be an outsider, somebody with no ties to Chris McIntosh, somebody with no ties to Luke Fickell that can come in here and look at this thing unbiasedly and figure out what's wrong, take any power of the football program away from the athletic director, give it solely to this GM to make the big decisions, give him 1 year under Luke Fickell, and see what's what. Do you think, to me it kind of feels like a compromise a little bit. McIntosh doesn't have to fire his guy. You show the fans that you're doing something. I don't know if it's the answer they want, but at least you're doing something and giving somebody else some power. Do you like that as a potential option if Wisconsin can't fire Luke Fickell right now?
I mean, I think it would be a great perspective to have as somebody unbiased with a lot of good experience. I don't know where you find that guy, but I'm sure you can, to bring in and really see the program and see it from, like you said, an unbiased standpoint, being able to see from a different standpoint too of NIL, where the money's going, how it's being handled, what kids are worth being paid this much. That goes into that too, I would hope. But it also comes off as like for McIntosh, hey, I don't have the balls to fire this guy, so I'm going to bring in somebody else to give a different opinion. I don't really know.
I don't think it would be McIntosh. I don't think it would be McIntosh doing it, from what I've heard. I think this would be a chancellor, board of regents type deal. This guy, this guy or girl from, at least, I don't know how real it is, but people who know things are talking, and that they would kind of remove McIntosh from overseeing the football program, give the power to the new GM, and let him deal with it. And that way, you've got somebody that can make a tough decision if needed. You potentially shave off that buyout a little bit longer, a little bit less expensive buyout. If you're able to get this thing going through 2026, or best case scenario, they diagnose the problems and this thing takes off like a rocket ship.
Yeah, I'll say if Luke Fickell comes back next year, I don't know if that identity of Wisconsin taking them very seriously. This was kind of the last year to me of seeing like Wisconsin on your schedule. This is the University of Wisconsin. We will respect. We've respected how they played. You respect that identity that's been built of the program in itself. I don't think you're taken nearly as serious if Luke Fickell's being the head coach next year. There's no reason why. There's no reason to take him serious. He's shown nothing to be able to have that type of respect. So if that happens, that's going to be a different dynamic. It could fit the fans, or fit with the fans in a tough manner too as well. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to want to go up and buy tickets and watch this product next year if he's the leader. So, and I guarantee you nobody's going to want to hear these press conferences and squat fest and all that crap going on. If you go 2-10, nobody's going to want to see that BS, right? So that would be very interesting. If he comes back next year, I'd be very curious on how this offseason is handled, and less rah-rah and less media talk. But maybe the GM sees all this and he's like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Well, I mean, we got to find something else. And you have somebody who can see that from the inside out.
You got to pound the rock, Colin. Just pound the rock. That's all it's going to take. Last thing here. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. If you got.
I'm just saying. I've heard that there's only one way and it's through about 8 times. So it's yeah. I can't imagine how these players are feeling.
It's true. It's true.
It is true.
But, so I think it's fair enough to kind of talk about the potentially a new head coach. Again, we'll see what happens the rest of the season. Maybe we'll all be stunned. But it's an interesting time to have a potential coaching search. Is also a very difficult time because Wisconsin just paid a buyout to Paul Chryst, your former coach. They would have to pay Luke Fickell roughly $25 million to fire him. So I don't know if you can necessarily get a big name again. I don't know if necessarily you want to go down that road. But there are some coaches right now on the other side of the country that feel like they have worn out their welcome, that are, very interesting to me. Dabo Swinney at Clemson, people are tired of him. This is just me spitballing. I have no idea how real anything is, but I think it's fair to say the fans have grown tired of him. The program kind of feels a little stagnant. There's James Franklin at Penn State. Would you be in favor of a situation like that? Somebody who's a proven winner that will, A, recruit great players, and B, I know James Franklin hasn't necessarily tasted the mountaintop or anything. I know he's got a history of losing big games, but obviously it's still James Franklin. He's done a lot for Penn State. But somebody like that who, again, maybe is past their prime, but at the same time, with 100% certainty, they know what they're doing. And I know we all thought Luke Fickell was a sure thing, but this feels like a different type of sure thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think those two resumes in particular, I mean, they have a little bit longer, they have a little bit more weight on it. James Franklin, I know that there's a lot going on with him not being able to win the big one and the big games, but I mean, there's probably 130 other programs that would much rather have a record with that head coach and winning that many games, right? So he's proven that he can build a really good team. They just haven't climbed that next step against the elite teams. Dabo Swinney, clearly, I mean, he's one that I think, he's a relationship guy and obviously been highly successful in building a program at Clemson for maybe not getting the highest recruits, kind of similar to a Wisconsin type of feel of who you're getting, what guys you're getting, the type of players. But I think finding those guys, right, is tough. But if you can find a guy that, could have a resume of winning, and maybe some Big Ten experience, something along the lines of James Franklin. And then you have a guy who can build relationships and really bring the best out of every single player on your program, like a Dabo Swinney. I mean, finding a guy like that would be great. Now that's seems like the perfect build of a coach that may not even be out there. But, and then again, just having respect of what Wisconsin has been before. I think that's very important when you're building a program at Wisconsin. Having the respect of what's been built, how it's been built, what are the rivalry games. I mean, just simple things like that, but respecting it enough to know this is how we're going to carry ourselves and this is why it's important to this program immediately. And then just building relationships with players. You've got to find a guy who can build relationships with players.
We'll end on this. I keep getting asked, after everything that's happened, is Wisconsin still a desirable job? Yes. It's a world-class university. You've got one of the best campuses in the country, if not the best campus. You've got a fan base now that's dying for a winner on the football program, and will show up in droves if you deliver the right product. Obviously, it may not... NIL, transfer portal, all that stuff, puts Wisconsin behind a little bit, but I know Gary Anderson, the former head coach, takes a lot of shit, and rightfully so. But he was the guy that I think woke a lot of people up to what this place could be. With the way he recruited, I mean, they were sticking their nose in battles that they never stuck their nose in before. I mean, there's 5-star running back from California, Joe Mixon taking visits to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's, I know they didn't get him, but, finishing runner-up for him. I mean, there were 4-star receivers, 5-star offensive linemen showing up for recruiting visits. I mean, the kid signed with Wisconsin, but they couldn't get him into school. But they flipped a Texas kid from Texas, a 4-star running back. I don't think people ever appreciate how difficult something like that is. And I always thought he did a really good job of selling this place and kind of advertising it as a sleeping giant with just everything Wisconsin has to offer academically, socially, athletically, at its best. I don't know if there's another place in the country that compares to Wisconsin. The other two you talk about are Stanford and Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame's obviously got better football that they have for as long as I've ever been alive, but and probably better academics too. But you talk about getting away and being on campus and just the social life Wisconsin offers. To me, it'll always be the best of all three worlds when you talk about a total package. Michigan up there as well. If you can get a winner as a football program, I would say that this place will always be desirable. I don't care how many games they lose. Do you agree with that?
You hit it all. You hit it all on the head. I mean, it's perfect because, like you said, with the campus, but you have a fan base just that cares about winning. They will pack that stadium when they care about winning winning football games. They'll pack the stadium out. And the beauty of playing in the Big Ten is you win your games. If you just win the games that you play, you will be in the playoff. You just have to win the games you play. And you'll be in the Big Ten championship. That's what I realized coming from the University of Houston when they were non-Power 5 to Wisconsin. Like, shoot, we just have to win our games. Like, we don't have to worry about, not controlling our own destiny. And that's the beauty of the Big Ten. But then you got a beautiful campus, fans who care about the program, beautiful culture, great people, and fans dying to have a winning program right now. If I'm a coach and I believe in myself and I get offered Wisconsin, if I know I can win some games out there, they're going to want to build a statue of you after the first season if you can have a good season. Kirk Cignetti is the perfect example. I know Indiana fans are like, let's build a statue today. And you build that momentum and you become a hero in a lot of ways. So how would you not as a head coach want to go and coach at the University of Wisconsin? And especially make an impact of what it's been before, and you can be part of that special, the special part of greatness that everybody cares about in the state.
Well, if there is light at the end of the tunnel, as we were talking about, in this era, you're always 1 year away. You can rebuild an entire roster overnight, and Indiana is the perfect example of that. It doesn't matter who you were in your hundreds of years of history before that. You're always 1 year away in this era. But Wisconsin will look to get back on track on Saturday against number 1 Ohio State at Camp Randall Stadium at 2:30. There's only one way to go, and that is through it.
Damn right, Evan. Damn right.